So I trained as a calligrapher, gilder, and heraldic artist. I initially went to Reading, where I studied type history under James Mosley and Michael Harvey, and then went on to Reading, to Reigate, to study calligraphy, gilding, and heraldic painting with a specialism in historical materials and techniques. I then went on to Birkbeck, where I studied Arabic calligraphy, English paleography from 600 to 1600, and archaeological illustration, and Middle Kingdom Egyptian hieroglyphs. So all of these things are centered around one central theme, and that is writing. Writing and letter forms, and not necessarily letter forms in Western letter forms. I love how marks turn into things that translate language. And as a child, I fell in love with Egypt and loved Egyptian hieroglyphs. And to be an adult and to be able to go to Egypt, I worked in a pyramid drawing hieroglyphs for the Metropolitan Museum in Egypt. And that made me want to get back into hieroglyphs. And so my studies and my career, they're really interlinked. They're really tightly knitted together because they essentially form the structure of my life, which is, again, centered around letter forms. So the aim of this lecture was to give the students a really brief overview of the development of the alphabet that we use in the West. Of course, this is a much greater, this lecture has a much greater scope because, you know, we only looked at Western lettering. We didn't even touch on the lettering in Sumeria. We didn't really look at in India and China and Japan and South America. And there's so much to it, but it was really to give the students an overview for them to see how the letters are written. It's one thing to see them in a book, but it's a very different matter to see them actually being written. And I think for a lot of students today, they're not accustomed to seeing the writing. They can search for stuff online and they can see it in a book, they could see it as a bit of printed text, but the drama of actually seeing it being written and seeing it being written that large really helps them to connect with it. And the aim was really to fuel their interest and for them to think, I could do that. I could really get into that. The workshop was something different in that I wanted to work with the professors here to help them and their students who are doing type and graphic design, so that their students would gain a deeper understanding of how letters work within the context of spacing and rhythm, tempo, and so that once they are able to perceive that in their own handwriting, that they would be better able to cope with it on a screen. I think as well, you know, for some of the students, and I was quite stunned when the professors told me that the class was full. I sort of thought that's good because it will make sure that at least one or two of those students will fall in love with calligraphy. And that for me is a real gift. It's a real blessing because bringing people to my craft is a joyful experience. Breathe. You know, this was the central issue in the class. You know, lots of people doing calligraphy, they're trying to write and they hold their breath. And they run out of air, and as they're running out of air, they start to rush the stroke, or they're rushing the word, and so the word collapses. And people don't realize that it's the breathing, the constant rhythmic breathing, that generates accuracy in letter forms, in script, in spacing. And on top of that, when you get into this rhythmic pattern of breath work and line work, it generates a meditative field. And so you start to feel calmer, you start to write better, you really connect with what you're writing. So for students wanting to work with what we started working with today, it's all about taking your time. And you know, in today's world, students, they send a message to their friend, they expect a message back. There's no waiting, and everything's rushed. And so to get them to slow down and get them to take pause and to sit back, to breathe, to connect, to connect with the writing and to connect with those around them who are writing together with them. That's a really amazing thing to do in this time.